Yeah, today's topic is constructor overloading. As we have seen in the previous classes about methods and constructors. Today we are going to discuss an important topic, that is constructor overloading. So what is constructor overloading? What is the purpose of it? How it is different from normal constructor? How we can do that constructor overloading? We all discuss in this. Okay. Let us see the first slide. Before we get into the constructor overloading, we are brushing up some things regarding the constructor. What is the major purpose of the constructor it is? So the major purpose of constructor is to initialize the instance variables of an object. So how does it look like? So it looks like a normal method, but the name of the method is same as the class name. And one more important point is it does not have any return type to it. So this is the description of a constructor. So when a class does not have a constructor, then a default constructor will be added by the JVM to your program. That is what we have seen. This is example program. Yesterday we discussed it regarding the constructor, and this is about parameterized constructor. Now this is what we are about to discuss, that is constructor overloading. So in a class, you can put more than one constructor in your program. So you can see in this program, that is, you have a box method name, double W, double H, double D. These are the various parameters which are part of this constructor. So by using this, which type of a constructor it is? It is parameterized constructor. So it is a parameterized constructor. It will take the parameters or values and it will be storing into the width, height and depth. So width, height and depth. And the second constructor which is part of this class box is a default constructor which initializes the values of width, height, depth to -1. All the values to -1. Next, we have one more constructor which has only one parameter, which is initialized to length. So it will take one value, only one value, and it will be supplied to all the variables which are part of this constructor, which are part of this class as instance variables. So major purpose is to initialize the instance variables. All of the constructors are doing the same thing, but in different ways, by using a default constructor, by using a parameterized constructor. So if a class contains more than one method with the same name, but with the different parameters, are called as method overloading. But here method is in the form of a constructor. So we call it as constructor overloading. I repeat once again regarding method overloading. That is, if a class contains one or more methods with the same name but different parameters, then it is called as method overloading. Now the methods in this program are in the form of constructors. So this is called as constructor overloading. So first constructor with the 3 parameters, second constructor without any parameters, the third constructor with only single parameter. Okay, this is about constructor overloading. We'll see the differences between the default constructor and parameterized constructor. So what is the difference between this default constructor and the parameters? First difference is it is useful to initialize all objects with the same data, that is default constructor. The second, in the parameterized constructor, the first difference it is mentioned as it is useful to initialize each object with a different data, different parameters. So what happens here is, when we discuss about this parameterized constructor, when two or more objects are created for a single class, let us say that no two objects. For example, there are two persons with the two different names. Yes or no? No two persons may have the same name. It is rare thing. If you have a same name, it is a rare thing. Let us say that some X, some Y. X will have some properties, Y will have some properties. Okay. The properties of two different objects will be different. So to initialize different values to different objects of the same class, then parameterized constructor is used. I repeat once again, if you want to initialize different values to different objects of the same class, then parameterized constructor is used. Okay, parameterized constructor is used. Next, when the default constructor is used? Whenever the objects of the same class has been created, when the objects have been same class have been created, they will have the same values to every objects which have been part of this class. Okay, I repeat once again, a default constructor will initialize every object with the same data. But parameterized constructor will initialize each object with a different data. So next point, in default constructor, it means that it does not have any parameters, as we know. So we will not provide any parameters to the default constructors. That's why it is called as default constructor. Next, parameterized constructor, you know that one or more parameters are possible. Next, when data is not passed at the time of creating an object, default constructor is called. It means that at the time of creating an object, if you are supplying any values, then a parameterized constructor will be called. If you are not supplying any values at the time of creating an object, then default constructor will be called. It is part of the JVM compiler. Next, under parameterized constructor, when the data is passed at the time of creating an object, parameterized constructor is called. This is what I am saying. When you are creating an object, at that time, you are supposed to give some values to the object. Then a parameterized constructor will be called. Okay, these are the some differences between default constructor and parameterized constructor. If you are clear with these points, I can go further. If you have any doubts, please raise. If you have any doubts, please raise the question. Or else you raise the hand. Differences between default constructor and parameterized constructor. Okay, I will proceed. So next we have one more thing, constructor and methods. So differences between a method and a constructor. So how method will look like and what are the features of it, and how the constructor will look like and what are the features of it. So constructors, it is used to initialize an instance variables of a class. As you know, constructor's purpose is to initialize the instance variables. Next, method. Under methods, it is used for any general purpose processing or calculation. So we are not initializing any instance variables by using methods. We are just calculating some data based on the variables. It is a general purpose. Next, under constructors, constructor name and class name should be the same. As you know, constructor name and class name should be the same. And one more point here, the second point as part of method is method name and class name may be, can be, can be same or different. It may be same or may not be. Okay, if it is same, we call it as constructor. Okay, if it is same, then we call it as constructor. If it is not same, then we call it as method. So next point, it is mentioning as it is called at the time of creating an object. When constructor will be called? At the time of creating an object. When a method is called, it can be called after creating an object. Try to understand this point. That is, every method will be called after the object's creation only. Once the object has been created, you are supposed to access methods which are part of the classes. Next, as part of constructors, constructor is called once per object. Try to understand this point. Constructor will be called every time whenever an object is created. So how many objects you are trying to create for one class? That many times a constructor will be called. Now method can be called several times on the object. Yes, if you want the method to be accessed multiple times, multiple number of times, then that method can be called several times. But according to constructor, whenever an object is created, constructor will be called. So based on the number of objects, the constructors will be called. Next, the last point as part of constructor, it is called and executed automatically. Try to understand this one. A constructor will be called and executed automatically by the JVM. But whereas in method, it is executed only when we call it. Whenever a method is called, then only it can be executed. Without calling the method, you cannot execute it. So these are the some of the differences between constructor and methods. So I think everyone is clear with this. I will proceed with the next topic, that is access control. So this is an important feature which is part of the Java. That means you can hide the data. Hiding the data is nothing but making the data to be in hidden, because you have to maintain security. So for that purpose, we will be using encapsulation feature, which is part of the Java feature. Encapsulation is nothing but binding of data and data members together. Okay, binding of data and data members together. We call it as encapsulation. Binding of data and data members together is called as encapsulation. Now what happens here? What is the advantage of encapsulation usage? It will help in protecting accidental or wrong usage of data, and makes the code to be simple and clean to maintain. So let us say that if you have, I will give an example regarding this encapsulation. That is, let us say that you want some money, you want credit from the bank, or you want to take credit from your friend or somebody else. So what you will do, you will give your account number or mobile number through different types of payments which are available online. Okay. So what happens here is, once you have received money, you want to pay to somebody else, then what you will do, you will be having different types of security mechanisms like passwords, PIN numbers, which are available to you for your account. So what happens here is, if you are sending money to somebody else, you will be sending the money with the proper security mechanism like using UPI password or what you have, different types of PIN numbers. So what you are trying to do here, you are trying to hide the data which are not supposed to be revealed outside. So that is what we are about to say. So data hiding is possible. Data hiding is a real world entity, so that we cannot reveal some personal data to others. So for that purpose, we will be using data hiding or data abstraction, what we say, as part of Java programming. So data hiding along with encapsulation, it is a better usage. So efficient programming will be done by the proper usage of a data abstraction or data hiding along with encapsulation. So this is what the controlling of data access. Next, we will see how we are able to control this data accessing by using different types of modifiers, access modifiers, which are part of the Java programming. So we have different types of modifiers like public, private, protected, and one more thing, we have default also. So as we know, public access specifier, if you are using a keyword public inside the class or to a class, it means that that class can be accessed outside by anybody. So it means that it is publicly available. When you are using public access specifier or access modifier, you can access that class or view that class all over. Next, default. Something default which behaves like public in some packages and private in some other packages. So default is one kind of an access specifier which is behaved as a public in some packages and private in some packages. So what are packages? I will discuss it later. So we will be discussing packages in upcoming classes. So you note the point that default, when you are using default, it will be behaved as public in some sort of packages and private in some other sort of packages. So next comes the private. It means that you are not supposed to access any type of variable or method outside of the class if you are using private access specifier. Next, we have protected members. So what happens here is, this kind of access modifiers are used to view the contents of the class within its subclasses. Okay, within its class and its subclasses. I will show you and I will demonstrate you regarding this protected member, that is protected access specifier, in the upcoming classes. Okay. For now, you understand that protected members, if you put protected access specifier, it means that the variables or methods, they can be accessible within the class and the subclasses of it if they are in the same package. Okay, if they are in the same package, then only they can be accessible. Next, visibility is one kind of a concept which shows what are the features which are available inside and outside of the class. That is, which are hidden and which are public in nature. So in this visibility, there is a sample program called a circle in which there are private variables are there x, y, r, and there is a constructor with the three parameters, okay, which are initializing the private members of the circle class. So these are the some of the sample. It means that we are hiding the instance variables and we are trying to put the methods. So see, all of the methods are in public nature because through methods we are accessing the instance variables. So without accessing the variables, we cannot write, or we are not supposed to write any program. So to access those variables, we should call the methods. Inside the method, you are accessing the instance variables which are under private nature, because x, y, r are possible within this class only. Within this class, within this method structures only, these x, y are available. So outside of this class, they cannot be. Okay. So next. So this is about visibility of variables and visibility of a class. See, circle class is under public nature. So this class can be accessed by outside. Okay, they can be accessed outside. So I think you have a class, database class at 10:45 a.m. It's almost 10:40, sorry, 11:40. So the remaining topics will be covered in the next class. So I hope everyone understood these topics. That's all for today. Thank you.